Her many voices, her many voices, her many voices, her many voices.
Hello, hello. Welcome to another Her Many Voices Foundation Lunch and Learn. I'm so pleased to be here today with Maren Krings and, of course, Alicia Fall, our founder.
It's good to see you both.
Thank you. Alicia, please share with us how you know Maren. How did this come about? She's the author of an incredible new book called H is for Hemp.
Yes. I had the fortune of Maren reaching out to me when she was working on her book. She was doing interviews, and for some reason, she decided I would be a good interview. Not quite sure what she was thinking at that time, because I was not one of the experts that she was speaking to. But she was going for a different perspective. She was looking at the indigenous perspective and the humanitarian side. And so she reached out. We had a Zoom call. Maren, what did we do? Maybe 3 hours, 4 hours on our first call. We went down every rabbit hole under the sun.
Yes, I think that's a very, very tight description of what happened.
Yes. And you know, I think we've been kind of attached at the hip ever since, because we've done a lot of travel together. We've done a lot of presentations together. As a matter of fact, we're meeting right now. I'm speaking to you from Amsterdam. Maren is on her way here. We're going to speak again on Monday, all about her book. A couple of weeks ago, we were in Latvia speaking there. Maybe a month or so before that, we were at NOCO in Colorado speaking together there. It's been a wonderful journey.
Doesn't it feel like the bandwagon without the music?
Yes, it is. It is.
Alicia is the music. That's perfect.
I was just going to say, we got the music on board after all. And Alicia, I always am impressed about your humbleness, because that might be that you're not the expert on industrial hemp, but when it comes down to connecting hemp and humanity, I would say you're one of the few experts out there who has a big, a fantastic, and a really authentic story to tell. So that was not by chance I contacted you.
Well, you know, a different perspective, because the reality is that we took something that was given to us, right? We made a plant illegal. The absurdity behind that and the impact on the environment, and also particularly with the BIPOC community, the negative impact it has had has been overwhelming. So to be able to speak, to be in the communities where the people have been impacted, to experience the regions where the environment has been impacted, I can certainly speak to that.
Yes.
I wonder, Alicia, if you would go into that a little bit more before you jump off, or if you'd like to stay. How should we do that?
I think I'll stay for a little bit, and then I'll let Maren go ahead with it, and I can certainly jump in at the end and say my thank yous.
Okay, sounds great. Well, I had the pleasure of meeting Maren as well when she was in Denver to launch her book, H is for Hemp, which was March 26th, in conjunction with NOCO, the hemp conference, the global hemp conference that happens here in Colorado every year. And that was such a pleasure to meet you in person and to be here and to really learn a lot more about your book. So this is really going to be a wonderful conversation. I'm really looking forward to it.
Excellent. I do have to say, isn't this quite stunning? Usually you always meet people online first, not vice versa. We actually changed the game there.
Yes, fantastic. which I love. Yeah, that was wonderful. Great. Yeah. So I want to ask you, Maren, about your background. What caused you to get interested in hemp in the first place?
Well, my background is I'm a photographer and I have authored already 3 photo books. So bookmaking was certainly something that I had become a liking of, let's put it this way. And that seemed to be a good format to output longer and more in-depth stories. And as a photographer, I had always, bless you, I had always had a focus on humanitarian issues. So it was social documentary photography that I did actually from the start on. And over the years of becoming a professional photographer, solidifying myself a little bit more in the commercial game in Europe, I started to kind of drift more and more away from that. And I know after releasing my third book, I was really yearning to go back to these roots of real storytelling. And of course, all of the other storytelling I did was just as real as it is now, but it was on topics that to me started to, they weren't really moving me from the bottom of my heart, let's put it this way. And I was really intrinsically trying to get connected back to this humanitarian source of storytelling. And when I set out, I had in mind to report or document on the refugee crisis, which was, kind of at its height still in Europe in 2016. And I didn't get too far when it already started that this little tiny hemp plant kept crossing my path. And it was pretty absurd because it was always on very unexpected moments that something happened and it was about hemp. And then, long story short, after a month, I realized that hemp, this one tiny little plant, was addressing all of these things that I was trying to tell the story on about the refugee crisis, because I kind of wanted to get away from just, documenting what was happening in Europe. But my intrinsic search was, why are people fleeing their home? Like, what has to happen to a human being to be displaced from their families, to be separated from their origins, from their roots, from their culture and everything? And suddenly the answer kind of became hemp, because it clothes, it feeds, it heals, and addresses humanity. So I could address already a substantial part of these problems that, not just refugees, but humanity in general, when it gets displaced, experience. And that was the moment when, I kind of still piddled around for a couple more months. And then after half a year, I realized, okay, well, this is just becoming more and more serious. It's going to be hemp. How hempy and in which structure and with what storyline at the base of it, I had no idea. And I think this was part of the journey being a little bit crazy and a little bit longer than expected.
Did you feel like there was sort of a divine intervention there, like those little clues came along that, or some kind of life purpose clarification that happened?
Totally. I mean, usually I will say that there were maybe 1 or 2 times beforehand that I was really driven by a story in a way where I completely, redirected my entire lifestyle to fit making that story. It had happened, but in this way, it was, I would say, the most extreme that had happened, because basically I had moved into my car just for a couple of weeks/month to tour through Europe and get a bit of a grip of that scene. And then after these couple months, I realized, well, if it's hemp, I'm not going to move out of this car until this story is done. And I ended up living in my car for almost 4 years, touring, 4 continents, 26 countries. I toured pretty much everything of Europe, Central Europe, all the way up north to Scandinavia. The furthest south I came was Morocco. And then, of course, the really long stretches I didn't do in my car, all of them. I did some of them on train, like Mongolia. I did go to China on a plane, and then, we had Turkey and Russia, span through Russia on the Trans-Siberian train. So, all of these travels coming from today's moment where we have a war sort of in our heartland of Europe, I realized that this story, probably in 5 years, I will realize was even more than just hemp and just this reconnection to, how can we save, shelter, and keep secure humanity. I'm realizing now also, because now that I've been on the book tour for 2.5 months, and Alicia really summarized it nicely, we've been traveling shoulder to shoulder for weeks now, months actually.
Yeah, it's almost 2 months now.
It's truly, it's been 2
Through the
months.
States and in EU. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's that's wonderful. You are both together, especially a force to be reckoned with. That's amazing, and you complement each other so well on your knowledge and your background on this topic. I Maren,
And
you were
if I may add one tiny thing, because I think it has an urgency for today's political situation. Exactly, Alicia, what's happening with you and I, these networks that are created now because we get to know each other and we have a common mission that we want to follow. We have ideas we want to push forward. You have your longhouse with the indigenous community, the work in Haiti to do. I am adamant about placing this hemp story within the industry, within different industries that are not connected to hemp now, but that could solve a lot of the, excuse my frank wording here, their dirt in these industries by using more hemp as a replacement material. I'm also realizing that there's a lot of human connection that has been built up, which I think if our entire world was connected the way we three are connected right now, and a lot of these, extended networks that we all have together, we can be fighting wars because we all love each other and we're all one family. And I know this sounds horribly hippie and cheesy right now, but I think we all know what this is. We all go with a little tiny backpack to other countries and we know we're being taken care of by our good friends.
Yeah,
it's not
and I've spoken about this a number of times. The people in the industrial hemp industry, I feel like are family over and over and over again. You can meet someone within this industry, and within moments, you feel like you know each other because you're on the same path. You
Yeah.
want something better for the planet. You want something better for the children.
Yeah.
you have the same underlying values, right? You
Yes.
have the same underlying values that are so important that it gives you this common ground in the first place. And also, you said, Maren, about how this solves so many different problems. I think it also demonstrates how we are all connected, right? All the problems of the world are connected. All the solutions can be connected. I love that, and how you were talking about that earlier. Would you like to add anything else about that?
Well, I will say that rarely ever in my life have I stumbled upon any story, or let's put it very specific, on any plant or any one object that opened so many different pathways to me. Because obviously, if you look at the book, it's not really thin. It's got a lot of chapters in it, but I'm zipping through literally all of the really big topics in life. It's food, it's cleaning our soils, it's building materials, it's plastics, it's textiles, it's paper, it's I mean, I'm not going to count down all of the chapters right now, but there's basically everything that humanity needs in some way to structure a life and to survive in any place on our earth, is being addressed by this one plant. And it was a tremendous challenge for me to, the challenge in the beginning didn't seem one because I was so fascinated by the plant. I just kept on traveling, and it was kind of like a pinball going off the wall. Like, I'd go to one project, I get a next lead, I'd go to the next country, follow that lead, next lead. And 5 months later, I'm like, whoa, how did I get to Iceland? How did I get to Mongolia? How did this happen? And then you're kind of refollowing your trace lines and you're realizing this is all becoming pretty intuitive, pretty arbitrary, but at the same time, when you know what you've done, it makes perfect sense. But the problem and the huge challenge was to put it into one book. What is going to be the structure of this arbitrary, to most people, arbitrary seemingly travel that I did, where they just go like, where are you now? Why did you go there? What's the purpose of that? And then you get lost in these lengthy explanations of, fiber, and fiber only works in China. That's why I had to go to China. So, yeah.
That's amazing. Before we dive into the paper that you created for the book and the more content about the book, more about hemp and the solutions, I would love for you to share a little bit about the personal journey of living in your car for 4 months and B, what you interspersed throughout the book, which was your private journal and your thoughts and your reflections about all of this. I think that makes the book so personal, and so it comes alive a little more. I mean, you have a ton of stories about the people you met as well who are doing good with hemp, but share with us a little bit about those two things.
So I need to correct you quickly. It wasn't 4 months. It was actually 4 years. But I had
meant
the
4
intention.
years.
Yeah, no, I set out with the intention of 4 months.
I knew it was 4 years. Yes,
My
yes.
mind.
Thank you for that. Yeah.
And so, yeah, there was this gradual journey of discovery in my life, because you move into a car thinking you're going to be there just a couple weeks, and then you throw an ISO mat into your car, a sleeping bag, a toothbrush, and that's it. And then the first night you realize, oh, these hiking shoes next to my head while sleeping are just disgusting. One problem. Next problem, you don't have water. You didn't think about that one. You thought you were just going to be fine with your 2-liter water bottles. Oops, didn't work, especially not in hot Italy in the summer. So what happened is there were a lot, I mean, just thousands of teeny tiny findings, too small to really address them in an official chapter of a book. And to me, always, I was very self-aware about this personal journey I was doing. And I will say in the beginning, I was sometimes even embarrassed about it, because I think I spent 2 months trying to figure out how I could keep my personal hygiene to a point where nobody would at no point and ever know that I'm living out of a car where I don't have electricity, I don't have flowing water, I do not have a bathroom and no shower. And I honestly don't remember anybody ever saying, you know what? You really do smell like you're living in your car. So it was, these were very elementary things. But the thing is, when you're living in your car, this suddenly becomes your life. You realize you get up at 4 in the morning instead of at 8 in the morning, because you have to figure out where you go to the bathroom, how you're going to wash your face, how you're going to get dressed and not look even dirtier than the night before when you took the dirty clothing off. There was so much logistics about making that happen with no, common grounds of a house and all these nice things that we call our normal life, that we usually don't even pay attention to, that we have them. And I was very adamant about keeping it out of the entire story of H's for Hemp, but I realized that when I started working with my wonderful story doctor, Pauline B.F.A in Amsterdam, she mentored me through literally the whole process. And I will say, without Pauline B.F.A, this book would have never taken on the form that it took now. Of course, it took a couple more people, a very good editor, a very good book designer, Ricardo Baez, my editor, Alva Leong. I mean, all of them, added their magic to the book. But it was especially Pauline who kept urging me and saying, Maren, you have to include that personal story. You can't separate it from the book. It's your story. You are becoming part of that hemp. And I kept saying, no. I mean, it took her 1 year literally to convince me to write these personal stories. And what is in the book now is small diary entries that are sort of giving very reduced snippets of car life, of my reflections on it, of the little mishaps, of how did I first meet a person that introduced me to hemp, and all these little things that kind of make the whole story happen. There's going to be a second book that's already written. I just need to find the publisher for it, which is a long, long version of these personal stories, which kind of follow the hero's journey, and it'll be a real reading book. So
Beautiful.
This really was, all these findings actually triggered the interest in sustainability in me, because I realized, you come from living in a house where I am right now, a studio, click, clack, light on, light off. Everything comes at your convenience. And suddenly there was none of it left. And you realize how much you had, but you always, unfortunately, have to lose everything you have in order to realize what you had. And that really made me reconsider, what is it that we need, and how do we treat the things that we have? And so there was a lot of these personal story and personal questions I asked myself that basically pushed the hemp book forward.
I am sure that was literally life-changing for you in such a positive way. Like, you are a different person than you were in such an incredibly positive way from that experience. I'm sure of it. Alicia, did you want to share anything else before you pop off? I know you have to go.
I thought that I'm in this beautiful refuge here. I'm surrounded by nature. And of course, now suddenly it's starting to get very busy around here. It's not as quiet as it once was. Oh, but we just lost Maren.
I'm here.
there we
Sorry.
go. I have tremendous amount of gratitude for Pauline. Thank you to Maren. I've met her. We have spent time together. As a matter of fact, we're going to be getting together again this week. And I'm grateful for her guidance on everything you've done around this book, because every little snippet, every little detail is really telling of who you are and the challenges and the drive and what is needed, for you to have completed this book and for hemp to return to the state that it needs to be. The two of them go hand in hand. They really do. So I think Pauline's suggestions, and well, I know that they were more than suggestions, but her push for you to put these stories in there were key for the success of your book.
I think so too, and I think it was worthwhile listening to Pauline, and I'm so glad she had the stamina to keep pushing me forward and saying, like, put the personal story in there. I will also say that I think there's a bit of a psychological effect in it. I would say if we were in an in-person event, I would say lift your hands if you're not affected by this. Someone standing in front of you and shaking the finger and saying, we need to do this different. We need to do that, and we need to do this. I think we've lived in that age and era of the climate crisis, or I rather like to say socio-ecological crisis. We've lived it in it for long enough now for people to get really, really ingenuously tired of being scolded and, pointed the finger at about everything they do wrong. Just pointing out what people do wrong doesn't really motivate us to do it right or to even get better at what we're doing. And I think I had a tendency to veer off into, I was being extremely self-critical about what I was doing. I went down to the point where I think I was nuts enough to rather take the bike than hop on a plane. So there were these moments when I got so radical towards myself that it didn't occur to me that what I was doing would actually negatively impact people, making them feel and think that I'm expecting them to also be the same radical way like me, like don't use electricity, switch off your fridge, stop eating meat, stop eating dairy products and all that stuff. Just because I chose to go down that rabbit hole and see how it worked for me, and the car wasn't an option because cheese, dairy products start stinking, they go bad, so is the meat. So it was all natural, but it doesn't sync with people who are not living in a car, who are not going through the situation. And by always trying so adamantly about cutting out my personal story to the big hemp story, I think people started losing that connection. What was, I was a critical character at that point already. And I think it made me a very unlovable person. Unless I shared my personal story, that brought it back for the people. And they were like, now I kind of understand where you're coming from. And I think that's a very natural thing in life, right? I mean, we might be speaking to somebody who's a refugee who might not appreciate me bragging about living without electricity, food, and all that stuff, because they don't have a choice right now. That's their daily horrible life that's happening without them having put any conscious choice into that. So I am very aware that every story has multiple angles from which you can come at them. And I think we need to be very careful. So I decided if I nail on anybody, I'll nail on myself. That's an easy one. So people can sit back, enjoy that, and they either come along on the ride or they have a good laughter about somebody who kept running into walls over and over again.
Oh my goodness. Alicia,
I think you bring up, I was going to say, Maren, you bring up a really crucial point. It is everybody's perspective, right? It's our experience and perspective. And we are so quick. Humans are so quick to judge. We do it over and over and over again. So thank you for those reminders.
Well, I
I
think I
am
have
going.
myself all the time. That's why it's always good to say it out loud.
We're our worst critic. Yeah. I'm going to hop off so the two of you can continue without me. Okay. As
Alicia,
a
it
matter of
was
fact, I'll be in
lovely.
the back. I'll be in the backstage.
It was
See you
lovely
later.
seeing you, and I'm super excited to catch up with you in person in a couple days. And we'll be
Yes.
back on stage on Monday
Yes, we
next
will.
week.
All right,
Great.
ladies.
Thank you, Alicia.
Bye-bye.
Okay, Maren, let's keep talking about this. It's such an amazing topic. I wonder if you could give a very brief, for a few viewers who might not be as familiar with hemp as others. Can we just give like literally like a 2-minute summary of how hemp is used? You know, just kind of a list of all the different ways that hemp is used.
Sure, absolutely. And I appreciate you circling back to the beginning because we really took a cold start and jump into the water here. I'm looking at my book index right now to make sure I'm not forgetting anything, but basically
Okay.
hemp can really cover everything. So one of the most important things is obviously you can make food out of hemp. It's a superfood, which means it has all the omega-3, 6, 9 fatty acids. It's extremely healthy. So eating hemp as a food source will, number one, keep you really well fed because hemp
So
protein.
technically, it's a grain. It's like a grain, like a.
It's not considered a grain. The hemp fruit is called a hemp nut, and it's a teeny tiny nut. So yes, it does look more like a grain than actually a nut,
Okay.
but it has the fatty oils, just like nuts do. So it's tasty, but it's got a lot of nutritional value, fibers and protein, and so I lived for a good part of my car life really off hemp protein and hemp seeds because none of
Yeah.
the two would really go bad. And I just put it into my coffee in the morning, the hemp protein. And funny enough, oftentimes I wouldn't be hungry until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, realizing that I hadn't really, of course, I had eaten something, but I hadn't really had the classical meal you would consider,
Yeah.
like bread
Wow.
or
Yeah.
something.
Okay.
So food is one. Then we have medication, which obviously is one of these topics that's always difficult to address because there's so many countries that still consider cannabis and THC an illegal drug, which it is not, but it's, for medical purposes, it's used widely, from cancer treatment to rheumatism to epilepsy and spasticism. The list is never ending. And so there's a high, of course, I'm not going to make any healing promises here, but I know that a lot of people are using hemp, cannabis and hemp oil and cannabis oil and all these different varieties quite strongly to heal themselves from usually rather bad diseases.
It's really
The other
considered a medicinal plant, like many other medicinal plants that are from nature. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's also why it was the first domesticated plant by humanity, because obviously people knew that already. So they were happy because they grew that one plant and they got their medicine, they got their food, but also they could extract the fiber, make ropes, sacks to carry things, even the bows for bow and arrow for, especially in the, medieval times. Medieval times, bow and arrow wasn't so much thing, sorry, but way back when.
Yeah.
And then, nowadays we still use the fiber. We use it for insulation material on houses. We use it for clothing. We use it for, there's many different grades of the textile fiber. So you can go from very fine textiles, which, if you look at this jacket here, it's a knitted jacket. It's super soft, but this is hemp. And so is the shirt I'm wearing. And that's also not a stiff cloth or, rope-like material. So there's very different grades of it. Then you can, our new technologies obviously allow for much more. So we have biocomposites, which in the industry, they're called hemp plastics. Hemp plastic kind of displays a little bit of a maybe misleading context, because it's not that you can take hemp oil and make 100% plastic out of it. You're basically taking the hemp fiber and taking that as the structural reinforcement with biocomposites, and there are already organic biocomposites, so then that becomes a very organic plastic, usually recyclable. So hopefully we won't find that again in oceans and things. Let me see what else. Paper. I'm forgetting the book.
Yeah.
Yeah, paper is something that's also been very historically anchored. So all of the paper, up until the Lutheran Bible, literally everything was made on hemp paper. When I say hemp paper, I do need to add that then paper was made from old rags, old clothing. And since clothing was usually made from flax and hemp, which we called under an umbrella terminology, that was called linen. So there were these linen collectors or rag collectors that then would grind up the linen and then make the paper pulp from it. So there was a huge amount of hemp in the paper way back when, which meant very little chemistry, very little, the lignin that is in trees. There's lots less. Sorry, my English is deteriorating. A lot less lignin in hemp than in a tree. So what happens is we don't need to use as much chemicals on the hemp to extract all of this glue. And therefore the paper doesn't fade away so quickly, because with the hemp paper, we have the problem that there's so much of the ground chemicals still left in the paper that, we all know that. Take a regular piece of paper and set that in straight sunlight and place an object on it. Everything that's exposed to the sunlight will start turning yellow very quickly, especially with newsprint. And, our papers fade away. They literally deteriorate. And hemp is much more durable than that. So it would be a wise thing nowadays to actually go back large scale on hemp paper and not just have me do that one hemp book on hemp paper.
Well, please share about that. We haven't spoken about that yet. You really did create with the printer a new paper for this book. So this book is printed on hemp. And so please share about that now. That's really an incredible part of your story.
Yeah, so what happened is very foolishly in the beginning of that journey, when I was still like all excited about everything hemp and all these many things you can do from the plant. And I declared, I'm going to make that book. I am going to make a book about the story, and I will make it or print it on hemp. I thought that was going to be an easy one. I didn't really know what I was getting myself into there. Then I started researching or searching in general for hemp paper, and I realized, oh la la, this is something really exclusive, and even worse, it seems like nobody has any. So eventually I found a couple of German paper companies that are producing hemp paper, but they didn't, or nobody at that point made a paper that was fitted for offset printing in the right grammature that I needed for a book, because you can't print a book on, halfway like cardboard paper, which would be the artist specialty papers. Then I don't know, this book would have probably been that high. I mean, it would have not gotten better.
Exactly. That would not work.
No. So I reached out to the paper manufacturer Hanemühle in Germany, and I asked them, and I said, look, I know you're doing a hemp paper for fine art photography printing, and I wonder if you can do the same thing for book and offset or digital printing. And they were open enough to actually step up and say, we've never done that. The book printing paper they've never done. And so they stepped up, and then it was a almost 2-year process until we figured out the paper in, all its composition. And I will say, I walked into this journey thinking like, oh, cool. Now I found somebody to make that paper. And, literally 2 years later, I became a little bit of a paper specialist myself, because we went through a lot of, trial and error, back and forth. We had to do test printings, realizing that, what all the technical difficulties are when you're printing with a paper that was just not, this was a first time after literally 90 years of prohibition when nobody had touched hemp paper anymore.
Wow.
So we were in for a lot of first times, of course, also a lot of, loss, money invested. I get asked so many times, why is the book so expensive? The book is so expensive because it's printed front to back, including the cover, on hemp paper. It's completely tree-free. it does come at a price. And the only way we can change that is by a lot of people hopping onto this wagon and joining, to order hemp paper, to print their, either it be yearbooks or books or whatever, brochures. I mean, anything can be printed on hemp. If more people join, we can make that happen, and the price will come down eventually. But right now, there's too little people willing to take that extra, meter of walking. And I think the time is right. We're having a complete crisis on the paper market. There's not enough wood available. That's why even the wood prices are accelerating and skyrocketing. And I think that actually offers quite a fair chance to hemp to celebrate a comeback.
I do think a lot of publishers and authors will consider it. I know a lot of authors can insist on it with their publishers, what kind of paper they want. As a publisher myself, I've published many issues of a magazine and 9 books, and those were always on. And the standard has been post-consumer waste recycled paper, right? But it's still paper from a tree.
Yeah.
And so what you're offering is something that's totally different and completely tree-free, as you said. I love that term. So the price will come down in the future. And I'm sure, I do think you're right that the timing is getting there, as many corporations are switching and realizing that, the climate issues are real, and there are non-carbon benefits that really this falls into that category. Another use, I want to circle back now to the uses of hemp real quick and finish that conversation. I just thought of building materials with hempcrete, and perhaps there's others.
Well, I mean, if you go into, obviously we can always find like niche products and everything. I mean, I've seen skis and ski poles made from hemp. I've seen hemp guitars. Wow. I've seen a lot of really interesting stuff. Suitcases where the hard shell was made of hemp plastic. So this is all going into the hemp composite area, which is, I think, really, really, really gaining traction.
Okay, that fits in there. That fits under biocomposites. Okay.
Yes, that's great. All under the biocomposite sector. And that's why, this is why it was so hard to find the structure on the book, because how do you bring together the skis, the suitcase, and the guitar, unless you actually really address the topic of plastic only, and then you can kind of put these things into perspective and scheme. And that's why we went for the encyclopedia format of the book, to make sure that people have a fair chance of literally open at any page of the book and just start reading what really hits their interest. So if you're into biocomposite, you might just want to read that one chapter, and the other ones you browse through eventually later on or something. So it's really, the whole book and the whole reading experience is very, I would say, organic or intuitive on that part, which is also, if somebody comes in and wants to know about building, then the building chapter will show you that there's not just hempcrete. You can do, hand fortified hempcrete building, which is a complete manual labor of love. Or you can buy a prefabricated brick and build a solid house with solid standing walls from hemp. One of the things that will always be the same is that it's always a carbon negative building material, because it takes up so much more CO2 than it emits during the process of planting, harvesting, preparing the building material, and then actually building the house, that it's, how could we toss this out as an option to use during the climate crisis, where everyone is trying to sequester carbon?
That's amazing.
Offering a lot of options.
So in about 5 minutes, we'll be taking questions from people who are listening. Before then, do you want to share like the most, just whatever pops into your head about, because I know you have so many examples, but what's one of the most profound experiences you had or products that you came across?
You know what? This is such a difficult question that I decided to probably link it to the last station I had been at with my travel now, and to the next station I'm going to. So there's 2 things that really fascinated me. One thing, I'm just coming from Latvia together with Alicia, and at the last stretch of Latvia, I was actually joining Kristaps Iglitis, who's just starting a masterclass on hempcrete building, which I thought was ingenious because he's building a new tiny home and he's inviting people to come along on the building process so that they can learn how to do a 0-kilometer hemp house. And that really, like the 0-kilometer hemp house, that really struck me because, I mean, I think in the building world, for anybody who knows building materials and how complex this can get, and carrying stuff from left to right and ordering, you have so much material you need to get to be able to go ahead and build anything, that it becomes quite, I think, charming to think that you can grow your own hemp field on one side, take it through the decortication, which Christoph's developed, the decorticator. It's called the micro-decorticator, the Herdmaster. And it's a teeny tiny machine that he just shoves the harvested hemp through. On the back end, the chives come out, and these he takes and mixes with the limestone and the binder and just starts building his house. And that really was phenomenal to see.
And I recall, is that the same person? I think it is, who one of the points here, if I recall correctly, is that he's created this micro-decorticator. How do you say that? Micro-decorticator?
Yeah.
That allows individuals to build their own homes with hemp, and they don't have to have a huge, giant piece of equipment that's unaffordable or difficult to use.
Right. I mean, usually when let's say the official way to build a home from hemp would be somebody, usually farmers or a cooperative of farmers, will grow the hemp in large quantities. Then they will bring their biomass to a post-harvest or decortication line, and then prepare the material there to have the chives and the herds and fiber, and then you can buy that material. But usually we're talking about hundreds to thousands of kilometers that this material is shipped from left to right to up to down to finally reach its destination where the hemp house will be built. So Christoph's invention of the Herdmaster was really an ingenious one because, of course, even his machine is too expensive, let's say, for a family to say, I'm going to buy this machine for 10,000 euro. But if people put together, and usually you live within a community of people who kind of support each other, who are all into building hemp. And I've seen it quite a lot over Europe, that there's these cooperatives that together invest in one Herdmaster, and then that Herdmaster just travels around within the community, and it is transportable in a car. So no huge machines, no tons of biomass that have to be transported from Netherlands to France, back to Italy and all that, because these are the parts, like the supply chain issues of, transporting stuff from left to right is really one of these issues that we keep forgetting when we're talking sustainability.
That is awesome. I was hoping you would share that story. And what's the word, Herdmaster? What was that word?
Yeah, it's the Herdmaster. It's basically HURD and then master. And the herd is that part of the stem from the hemp plant that you use for building. And
great.
I'd be happy. I don't know if there's any way to share links later on, but I can always, if anybody were to be interested, we can share the link later and make sure that people have access to their research.
So we have a question here, but if you'd like to type the link in the private chat, then Aisela will take care of that for us and get it to everybody.
I am copying it into the private chat now so everybody can get it.
Great. And then we'll go for our question. There we go. Great. Okay, perfect. Thank you. So Yuri is asking, can you recommend a brand of hemp that you can purchase in the US?
A brand of hemp for what? For house building, or I would need to know a little bit of the output idea, because technically, hemp has been, usually a farmer already makes a decision on growing hemp. Like when they start growing hemp, they have to decide, am I growing for fiber? Am I growing for building material? Am I growing for CBD or for food?
Yeah. I see another note here. I see another note here from him. He was talking about grains or oils. Yeah. There we go.
Okay. Well, I mean, obviously, I'm not really a consultant for farmers, and I don't want to do jobs that other people definitely have learned and invested much more time into doing. But I know from my research that a lot of people, at least here in northern parts of Europe and Central Europe, use the finola hemp for, especially for the oil, but that's more prone to grow well and do well in the northern hemisphere. So this is a hemp strain that comes from Finland, or genetic that comes from Finland, and it definitely grows best up there. So what you want to do is, depending on where you live and what you want, you do need to get in touch with people who grow hemp and who have a little bit of base knowledge about it, to make sure that you find out which, there's a lot involved. Which kinds of hemp may you grow? Which ones are allowed by the agricultural standards? Because if the hemp shoots above certain THC levels, then it's not considered industrial hemp anymore, and you might run into legal problems. So, whatever you do with hemp, make sure that you touch base. There's so many hemp associations in America. And probably Alicia will be more common to suggest. But even if you go to the NOCO website and look under WAFBA, you'll find a number of resources on hemp, and can always, Hannah, I'm just looking, Kona PUS. Oh, that's right. Hannah is also doing it in the USA now. Hanna Gabrielova is a wonderful connection. I mean, she is one of these unlimited sources of knowledge when it comes down to different hemp kinds.
And here, what for eating? Really, just something to buy. Do you just recommend any particular brands or anything to look for food?
You know what? I'll give a diplomatic answer here. I think what you should really all do is, if you're into hemp, connect to your local people, because when we're talking sustainability, you need to make sure that your food is locally grown. Support your local farmers, support your local hemp networks that are already investing probably around 25 years of their time into bringing this plant back to life. So what you want to do is, no matter where you are, connect to your local people and make sure you support them, because there's no wrong hemp to be grown. And most of the people that do food, it's not rocket science. So any hemp food that will be produced is probably going to be a really good one.
Yes, and Lisa Montgomery is sharing as well. White plume hemp through Evo Hemp Indigenous Lakota Tribe would be a good way to start too. So yes. Alicia is back, and I thought before we do start to wrap up, Maren, is there anything that we did not discuss at all that you wanted to make sure that you shared with everyone?
No, I think we really zipped through so many topics, and I feel no, I think we really covered it all. I mean, in fact, I will say that, looking at the index of my book, we could probably fill another 5 hours of this talk to roughly touch all of the chapters in there. But whoever is interested, I do want to pitch this, because this is not really accessible information on my website just yet. Alicia was kind enough to store several books. She has about 100 books left in the United States. So there is a possibility for anybody in the United States interested in the book to order it at local. The United States are huge, so this is not so local, but at least it's shipping within the US. And if anybody wants to, that's also offered on the website. As soon as you order from the US, you'll have the local shipping option.
Oh, that's wonderful. Let's put your website up here as well. Just rattle it off, and Aisla will get it up there.
All right. .com. No typos, looking good.
Your name. Okay. MarenKrings.com.
Yes.
Alicia, welcome back.
Thank you. Just so you know, this is where I am. So noise that you're hearing are birds in the background. So, but I'm
Which
in this.
park are you in Amsterdam? I'm dying to place you in Amsterdam.
You know what? I'm in South Amsterdam, but I can't tell you the name of the park because I don't know. Okay. It's a big one though.
It's looking good.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I thought I would have a nice little backdrop setting for today instead of being in the apartment. So
that sounds good.
Yeah.
Alicia, what else would you like to share?
I was just going to say, Maren, I'm so glad to see your face. Thank you for joining us today. We've been wanting this to happen for some time.
I know.
And you know, as things go for you and the next book release and all of those things, we'll definitely have to have you come back because there are going to be so many more stories along the way. I know you already have stories going from Latvia back to Germany. So
yeah, we'll keep them under the seal for right now. But it was surely adding material for volume 2 of the book.
yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have several people saying, save a book for me in the chat. So you can do that, Alicia. I know you'll check that later and make sure you have that.
Yep, we will make sure. We've got plenty of books, so.
I think this book is actually the resource for anyone interested in hemp at all. This needs to be, I mean, it's going to become the go-to book resource for.
Well, before we go, you need to share the story on the gentleman who they were getting ready to cart off in handcuffs, were they not? And he said, wait, read this book to the police. Share that story.
Yes, that's actually a good one. So one of the things that reached me in I think it was the very first 2 weeks when I was staying with Alicia, we had just launched the book at NOCO. And then my friend, who was an early supporter of the book, Christoph Kirchler from Eco Passion in Italy, in South Tyrol, he contacted me completely excited. And he says, you will not imagine what happened. I said, oh boy, it sounds dramatic. What happened? And then he said, well, I was at that body fair in Cologne, and there were a lot of CBD products. And, you know, we still have that thing here in Europe with the novel food, which means that CBD is still for some considered as novel food, and therefore you may not sell or consume it and all that stuff. And since, you know, the whole law situation, I mean, for those in the industry, it is completely clear, but even the police oftentimes doesn't really know, or even the equivalent to the FDA in the United States, in Germany, they're very confused because obviously there are no hemp specialists and there's nobody to really give them the full rundown of what's what is CBD, what is THC, what is food, what is a supplement, what is, you know, when does it go into medical purpose healing and all that stuff. So they were touring over this trade fair incognito in civil clothing, and they kind of, you know, checked out his booth and were very curious about all the products he's selling. He was very openly telling all the stories about the fantastic effects of CBD in the cream and balm and this and that. And then when he was done, they just turned around. They were like, well, you know, you're not allowed to sell any of this. And he was like, what are you talking about? And he was completely shocked. And there was a certain risk of this having legal actions to follow. And he had the book with him, and he, in that spur of a moment, he just told them, he's like, okay, look, before you go any further on this now, take this book, sit down over there in that seat, take 10 minutes, go through the chapter, H is for health. And when you're done with that, we'll talk about whether you take me in handcuffs anywhere or if I'm just going to stay here and continue helping the rest of the world. And they sat down, and I found that really cool that they actually took the time and they sat down with a book. They browsed through the health chapter, and it has a lot of stories, you know, of people with MS and really heavy disabilities, how they are using it. And when they were done, they came back with a book and they said, is it possible to buy one? Because we really love it. I mean, this is like the first time we understood what this is about. And of course, you please go selling this stuff to everyone. So it was a phenomenal, lovely story. One of those things that just, you know, I think Alicia and I, we both had a bit of tears in our eyes because that's so touching when, you know, good stuff happens and it doesn't take half of the world to convince one person that what you're doing has nothing at all to do with bad intentions or possibly a drug.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the right people too. When people have the authority to just take you away and they take the time to educate themselves before they take an action, it makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, I actually, I wish they were listening, because I totally congratulate them. And I think a lot more governments and legislative people, EU commissioners, all these people in these high political positions, they need to start listening, because they're there because we people wanted them to be there. But I think a lot of these people are forgetting that they have more of a common mission to follow up on than just their own intrinsic interest in whatever it is that's making them happy when they got out of bed. Because that's a lot what I'm seeing, that the big picture, we're starting to lose it. And that's why it all becomes so complex, because you can't separate the world from the world in order to make it easier to understand.
Circling back to that point that we're all connected, it's all connected, right? And the solutions are connected as well. Maren, would you please put the front cover of your book up so we can just eyeball it one more time?
Absolutely. Let me take the badge of Hanemühle off.
Thank you so much. The book is called H is for Hemp. And what's the absolute best way for people to get their hands on a copy?
The best way is if you actually go to my homepage, the one that we posted in the chat, and literally on the landing page of the homepage, you'll already find the book, and you'll have the option of purchasing it. And don't worry, as soon as you put in your country, it'll either redirect you to local shipping for the US, or it'll address all the individual shippings. I will say that, I mean, I know we're talking to an American audience, so this might be slightly mal-addressed, but we will be, we as Alicia and I will be part of Packhaus Weicher next week on Monday. I will have books there as well. So if anybody from the Netherlands is listening who wants a book and does not want to pay any shipping and handling, please be there at Packhaus Weicher and make sure you sign up for the event. It's free of charge. So anybody who's in here listening to us now can also join the Packhaus Weicher event. I will try to find a quick link for that. And then, if anybody wants to listen to Alicia and I talk a little bit more next week, please join us.
That is wonderful. Thank you both so much. You guys are a force to be reckoned with. The two of you together is like my favorite thing. I absolutely love it. And I'm so excited that you're working together and moving forward together. And I can see a very big future for the both of you in hemp. I really do. It's amazing. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Myrna. This was a wonderful talk.
Did you find the link for the conference? There it is.
There it is. I'm redirecting everybody to my website right now, because I couldn't in the fast motion find the direct link. But if you go to this one, it'll link you up with a Packhaus Weicher website.
Okay, I think it's going to appear on our screen any moment now.
Okay, I think it's
backstage magic to happen.
Backstage magic is happening, I'm sure. It's the name of your website / the name of the conference, and then I'm gonna give it another minute here. Let's just
here it is.
Packhaus Weicher. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Do you guys want to just spell out the name of that conference so people can look it up on their own search engine?
Packhaus, P-A-K-H-U-I-S-D-E. Schweiger, let's see.
It's
Z-W-I-J-G-E-R.
There we
go. I feel like we're back to school here.
Thank you so much.
For all the years of spending time in the Netherlands, my Dutch is non-existent, almost.
I think we're doing absolutely great. I mean,
yeah,
I'm starting to learn one word a week in Dutch here.
Well, you know what? To pronounce it sounds better with the German accent than it does with, mine. So
I don't get that feedback right now, but sure, I like it.
Well, thank you so much.
All right, ladies.
I really, really love this chat, and we'll see you next month, everyone, for another Lunch and Learn.
Thank you, that's right. I think we have Tamara Kantav coming on next month, or I can't remember. Maybe so. All right. Have a
Wonderful.
beautiful, beautiful rest of your day.
Still have our story.